Greetings, 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 and greetings. It is I, your king, Clifford Jefferson. I sit as a Godfrey, the fifth Caliban Jew, son of folk ruler of Jerusalem. I am the reincarnation of he who you call Jesus Christ, who is the King of kings and the Lord of lords. I am the king of the English Church. You are now listening to the teachings of the Clifford's Inn. You are amongst the panel who are the trustees of the English Church. We come to please our brothers and sisters with this life-giving water. First to speak to my queen, Sister Godwinson from the House of Godwinson. We have remarks from Archbishop Belmont from the House of Belmont, as well as C.A. DEJURE from the House of Murphy, our brother Burgess from the House of Burgess, as well as our clerk, Sister Walker from the House of Walker. All others, well, I will allow you to speak at the end of the closing of today's lesson for the sake of time. With that, Queen.
Greetings, everyone. Hope everyone had a blessed week. For the sake of time, I'm going to keep it short, but just to elaborate on a lot of the issues that everybody's having. I'm going to say that, you know, the most important thing is the charter, because without holding them to the charter, you don't have those rights and immunities and liberties that a true English man and woman should have. And with that, I digress.
Well said, well said. Archbishop.
Greetings, everyone, from the Kingdom of England, Empire of Albion. I, Archbishop Belmont, from the Noble House of Belmont. Today is August 28, 2972 of the Berber calendar, which is equivalent to 2022, the Gregorian calendar. And like we say all the time here at the Third Temple English Church of England, it's always great to be amongst family, especially those who are actually just now starting to hear us. Once again, we are at a state of emergency, the reason why we take our work here very serious. You know, the information can be intimidating and daunting, but that's because of the severity and situations that we're dealing with right now, because of the situation that we have been put into because of our lack of knowledge regarding who we are going back to time immemorial. So with the understanding of today's lesson coming from our King Clifford Jefferson, regarding the king's two bodies, is imperative for all who are trying to find themselves back home to salvation, because it's only going to come in one way. And for the English people, this is our road. So with that being said, I digress and leave the rest of the introduction to the rest of the panel.
Well said, Archbishop DEJURE.
Peace and love, everyone. I trust all is well at the sound of my voice.
Pardon self, DEJURE. Let Countess Walker go first.
She's not going to speak at the moment.
Okay, all right, okay. You can continue, Sia.
Greetings, greetings. Peace and love, everyone. It's noble brother Murphy from the House of Murphy. Welcome. Happy to be here with my kith and kin. Looking forward to the marvelous lesson. I don't have much to say, I digress. But again, looking forward to the marvelous lesson, and peace and love to all on the panel and those hearing at the sound of my voice.
Thank you, Brother C.A. DEJURE. Brother Burgess from the House of Burgess. Greetings, noble.
Greetings, King, Queen, the panel. It's always a pleasure to be amongst the family and, you know, communion, break bread. So pay attention to the lesson so you can understand the two kings' body politics and be able to differentiate the abstract to the concrete of which we stand. I digress.
Well said, well said. For each and every one who spoke from their respective houses, as well as those who could have spoke, but for the sake of time, which will not allow, we love you and we thank you for your kind words and your kind wishes. Today is a marvelous lesson. Me and the Queen has prepared for you. I'm going to try to articulate that within the time span that's given. Please be diligent and please be noteworthy to make sure that you take notes. I'm going to speak fast. I hope I speak clear. And I hope that everything that I say will be spoken in clarity so that we can all understand what it is in our purpose and our committed in lieu of our affiliation with the English Temple Church, which is our body of politics as given to it by our ancestors, protected by the crown. And we know that the crown is represented by the king as corporation soul. So without further ado, let's get started. Archbishop, let me share my screen. Hopefully we don't have no hangups in the
Good to go.
My computer. As we know, we was discussing the last week about the king's two bodies. The king's two bodies deals with the king, the kingdom, and what we call the king, the kingdom, and the crown. The king, the kingdom, and the crown are distinct but not separate. The king, the crown, and the rim are distinct but not separate. The king is the head. The crown is the authority, and the rim is the empire, kingdom, whatever term you choose to use. But it's made up of what we call the king's two bodies, which is the natural body and the body of politics. We call this in medieval ages, it's called the corporation soul. We have two types of corporations, corporation soul and corporation agri. Very, 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 very important. All right, here in North America, and our body of politics is a corporate agri because it's ran by a corporate head under what we call the president. Under the Commonwealth, they're ran by a corporate head. It's called the head of state, or she's called the Queen Elizabeth. She's nothing more than a figurehead, which means figurehead, just somebody who's sit in the position thereof, but not the owner of it, or does not sit in the authority of it. All right, and we have proven that in previous classes. We know that under the public trust doctrine, it says that United States is successor to the crown, and that is fixed in nationality. And we know nationality deals with birthright. Everybody concur?
Yes.
It deals with your nation and your country. All right, so we're just gonna move swiftly and quickly through the lessons that we already revisited. We're just revisiting the old lessons so that we can move forward. So the king's two bodies, the study of medieval political theology. We know politics deal with body of politics. This was done by a Russian by the name of Ernest Kurtanowicz. It said it concerned medieval political theology and that the distinction separated the body natural, a minor corporal being, and the body politics. So it says the monarch's corporal being, i.e. the physical body, from the body of politics. So what is the body of politics?
City, state, and young.
Body politics. As you can see, for all those who are visiting the site, you can blow up this picture, and you can see, and on the figure here, the body made up of a bunch of people, because the word politics means citizen or city. All right, and then you have the head here. Levi means Athens means law, and Levi means law, and Athens means sin. So it means good and evil. Right and wrong, right or wrong, bad or good. So we're dealing with the body of politics because the body means a whole. And then the politics deals with the polity. Key word, everybody, polity. Write that down. The body of politics is a polity, such as a city, a realm, or a state, considered metaphorically as a physical body. So it gave you three distinct body of politics or polities: a city, a realm, or a state. The former and the latter we are associated with, but the middle one we're not. It said realm. Realm is symbolic to a kingdom or an empire. Everybody understand? And it made it, and it said metaphorically as a physical body. So this is not symbolic. This is not abstract. A physical body is something concrete. Everybody understand?
Follow.
Historically, the sovereign is typically portrayed as a body head. and their analogy may also be extended to other anatomical parts, as its political readings of Aesop's fable of belly in the members. This is false right here. This is all abstract. The image originated in ancient Greek philosophy beginning in the 6th century BC, all abstract, and was later extended in the Roman philosophy, all abstract. Following the high, late, and medieval revival of the Byzantine Corpus Juris and Latin Europe, the body of politics took on jurisprudential significance by being identified with the legal theory of a corporation, of the corporation. Everybody understand? That's what's won in the day. So when you're dealing with the concept of a body of politics, always associate that with a corporation. And they gave you 3 types: a state, a city, and a rim. We are associated with the city and the state, not the rim. And we know, according to law, the state is not considered for diversity issues. It's everybody else who incorporate in that state, which is the city, town, county, municipality, borough, village, etc. All these operate on what they call a home rule, or what they call a Faulkner Act, which is an act or a charter created by an act of the state legislature. Now, how can the state grant this legislation in lieu of a charter and the state is not considered for diversity issues? Because the state don't exist. The state only came into being when they changed from colonies to states. Everybody follow?
Follow.
So when you're dealing with the body of politics, they said, look at it from a legal theory as a corporation, gaining speed or salience by gaining salience in political thought from the 13th century on. In English law, the image of the body of politics developed into the theory of the king's 2 bodies, and the crown as the corporation soul. Everybody understand that? It's a crown or corporation soul. Let's go back here. King's 2 bodies. Real quick. Now, since we are bringing out information that's considered gone or forgotten, it's considered to be presumptuous because nobody talk about this anymore. You know, it's why you talk about something that existed hundreds and thousands of years ago. It's irrelevant. They don't use that type of law anymore. But that's wrong. That's not true. We already improving in previous podcast that under 46:3-2 of New Jersey Revised Statute, which is actually really parliamentary statute, because it mentions the King of England, body politics, and person. So if you mention the King of England in the New Jersey Revised Statute, then actually tell each and every person who read that statute, that's a parliamentary statute from Parliament, because it mentions the King of England. So now we got what they call masters in regards to the legal theory or political theory, and indulging the concept of a corporation soul, and encompassing the 2 natures of the king's 2 bodies, the body natural and the body of politics. We have Edmund Plowden, we have Edward Coke, Edward Blackstone, the other guy, Cartonovich, as well as Catherine Carcole. These are masters who spoke about the concept of the doctrine concerning the king's 2 bodies, which we as a religious society incorporated through our certificate of incorporation. It's on the record, filed with the county. So this is the description from these masters on the doctrine of the king's 2 bodies. They say that the king has in him 2 bodies, a body natural and a body politics. His body natural, if it be considered in itself, is a body mortal, subject to all infirmities that come by nature or accident, to the imbecilities of infancy or old age. But his body politics is a body that cannot be seen or handled, consisting of policies in government and constituted for the direction of the people, i.e. the king's subjects, and the management of the public will, and this body is utterly void of infancy, of old age, and other natural defects and facilities which the body natural is subject to. And for this cause, what the king does in his body politics cannot be invalidated or frustrated by the disabilities in his natural body. Everybody understand?
Right.
So that means that the king, his body politics, governing his land, never dies. It only dies under what we call the king's demise. It becomes exceeded to whoever takes it by what we call eminent domain, which is the state. Prior to the states, it was the colonies. But when the colonies changed, they became states. So now there became the sovereigns of the estate that was left in a trust under the king's body of politics. But the people who became trustees of that body of politics are not the king's subjects. Very important. Why do I say that? Let's go ahead. Everybody heard about the Cestui Que Trust before, right?
Yes.
I'm pretty sure everybody heard about it. Everybody's talked about it. Moorish Americans, Native Americans, colonists, everybody talks about the Cestui Que Trust. The word Cestui Que means he who is alive. He who lives. That's what that means. Because the trust is left for a beneficiary. Whenever there's a estate left, it's left for a beneficiary. And it must be overseen when that beneficiary is of a minor, it must be left up to an administrator called a power of an attorney. They are called trustees. This was a result of what we're subject to now called common recovery. Common recovery, land that's been taken by way of what we call fee is simple on what we call deeds, abstract deeds that were chartered by acts of the state legislator to what we call municipal corporations. Cities, towns, villages, they are all corporations that have their own body of politics. And the state allowed them to do so. But when they did that, they took away your body of politics, which was left to the king for his subjects in a trust called what? A Cestui Que. Make sense to everybody?
Follow.
Yes, follow.
Any questions?
Thus far.
Could you please elaborate?
Okay, a Cestui Que Trust is a trust. When somebody dies, they create a will for whoever beneficiary that they want to leave something to. You understand that?
Yes, sir.
Okay, so pretty much it's the same thing, but this particular trust comes from the time of the Middle Ages, because most of the trust that I just mentioned was based off legal entities, because you're subject to a city or a state. So somebody who's living in a city or a state and their family members who live something in the trust within the city or state, then it automatically is governed by the laws of that state. And in the laws of the state, you're subject to the state statutes, which governs the overseeing of a trust, where it takes it out of the body of politics where the original trust lied in. Do you follow?
Damn, that's some heavy shit, boy. That's some diabolical
Watch your
shit. right
mouth,
there.
brother.
I'm sorry about that.
Okay, you follow?
Yes, sir.
Okay, let me move forward. This is a church. Always maintain that memortoire. Cestui
I'm
Que.
sorry.
This
I
is
apologize.
It's all right, brother. It's all right. Any other questions?
No, sir.
Okay, let's move forward. Cestui Que, literally the person for whose use or benefit the fealment was made, in modern terms, a beneficiary. A fealment means a deed. It's called a land deed. For the sake of time, you can look it up on your own time, but it's called a deed because most trusts involve property, and most property denotes to land. Because what's the sense of having other property if you don't have land?
Click it.
Yeah, click it real quick.
That's the tapestry from Mount Robinson. That's what I was looking at.
Yes. Yeah. Sit. Move that copy. Scroll up.
Scroll up.
The Middle Ages. Yes. In the Middle Ages, especially under the European feudal system, i.e., feudal is fee and simple. Feudal system, fealment or enfeoffment was a deed by which a person was given land in exchange for a pledge or service. Everybody see?
Follow.
Follow.
Okay, go back.
Go back.
Yes.
How long is it?
So enfeoffment or fee and simple is nothing more than the so-called abstract deed. It is a long French phrase meaning in English invention, which appears in a legal phrase cestui que. Everybody follow?
Follow.
Follow.
What is the
Follow.
beneficiary? A beneficiary also in trust law, cestui que. Cestui que is in modern day, it's called trust law. But when you mention trust law in modern day, they don't go back to cestui que. Because cestui que take you to a different type of body of politics. Where if you just use trust law, you stay in a modern day body of politics. Everybody understand?
Follow.
Follow.
All right. So a beneficiary, whether you're talking about this modern day body of politics or our body of politics, going through the dissolution of the monastery, in the broader sense, is a natural person or other legal entity who receives money or a benefit from a benefactor. So it could be a natural person or a legal entity. Most people who became citizens are given what they call a legal personhood. A legal personhood is a legal description. It's called a juristic person. Y'all know that's what they call a straw man or all capital letter person. This is what they're talking about. If you receive any type of mail in all capital letters, that's a straw man or a legal person, give a legal personhood, born in the territory, subject to that body of politics that's operating that body of politics in that territory, whether it's a city or state or a rim. Whatever it is your obligation to choose one. Everybody follow?
Follow.
Let's move forward. So you're either a natural person or a legal entity. So if those who got these trusts set up, saying your mothers and fathers left you something, you better make sure they find out if they're a natural person or a legal entity. Because if you're a legal entity, you're not getting nothing. All right, let's move forward. I'm skipping just for the sake of time. It said in any such trust, legal status was partly to let me go ahead. Right here. Medieval invention. Many reasons have been given for the invention of a cestui que used as a legal device. During the Crusades and other wars on the continent, landowners might be gone for a long period of time. Brothers and sisters, you're in a war right now. You're in war. This is called a Cold War. You got a hot war and a Cold War. A Cold War is a war dealing with politics. Everybody understand? I'd rather fight this war than to fight wars dealing with the hot war, bombs and guns.
Wow.
Take your pick. You see what's going on in Europe,
Hmm.
all around the world, in Ukraine, Europe, apparently, it's going to be all around the world. We're going to have our choice which way we want to go. If it's going to be a political war or a war of dealing with guns and violence, etc. Because a political war takes its play out in the courtroom.
Call it a battle.
Yes, sir, a battle. So it says during the Crusades and other wars on the continent, landowners might be gone for long periods of time. So I mean, they talking about ownership of land. Others might be absent because of business adventures or religious pilgrimage. So they dealing with merchants and dealing with religious societies. One of the two. Business is a corporation. Religious societies should be a corporation soul. But they're not, because most religious societies are what? 501c3. We're not a 501c3. We're a corporation soul because the corporation soul represents the crown. We already been through that. Those who on their first time, you have to go back and watch the lessons for you to be on the same level we on, because you can't cheat. You can't cut the line. All right. There was no assurance they would ever return home. The Cestui Que allowed them to leave a trusted friend, a relative with the sort of power, discretion, and they hope the duties. All right. Today, this power will be called the power of attorney. When you got to trust, what you got to go do? Hire an attorney. They're the ones who ripped us off, these attorneys, under common recovery, which was abolished in our ancestors' law. So it said religious orders such as the Presbyterians, Cistercians, how do you pronounce that? The Benedictines and other mendicant orders took vow of poverty, yet retained the use of donated property. Cestui Que use allowed them to benefit of land without legal ownership. This is the reason why Edward I passed the Statutes of Mortmain, because all the churches that were created were not paying their free common soakers to the king. Who getting the money now? All the priests, all the bishops are getting the money. This is why Jesus came and said, this is a house of thieves, a house of dens. A den of thieves, I should say. It said, besides the obvious limitations placed on the Cestui Que by the Statutes of Mortmain, I just mentioned that, the statutes of uses, the statutes of wills, its legality was shaped indirectly by the provisions within the Magna Carta and Quint Imperatorus. The Magna Carta and Quint Imperatorus. This is dealing with writs, order to show cause, because all this stems from the Magna Carta, and the Magna Carta stems from Parliament, and Parliament stems from the government, which is the body politic, going back to our ancestors' estate. Everybody agree?
Agreed.
Agree.
That's the national certificate of our charter. Let's move forward. For the sake of time. Here you see Henry VII. Henry VII's concerted efforts were made under King Henry VII to reform the Cestui Que. Henry VII was the founder of the House of Tudors. The House of Tudors took over our state through what we call the War of the Roses with the Yorks and the Lancasters. The Yorks and the Lancasters took place before, prior to that was called the 100-Year War. The 100-Year War was between Edward I and Philip VI, if I'm not mistaken. Edward I was son of Henry III. Henry III was the son of John. John was the son of Henry II. Henry II was the son of Godfrey, the fifth Count of Anjou, who my surname descended down from. How I know that? Because I'm being able to interpret these lessons to give it back to you. And I'm going to show you what I mean by that. So we see Henry VII, the founder of the House of Tudors. Now we're going to go into Henry VIII. You see him right there. Henry VIII sought to end all Cestui Que uses and regain the incident fees and payments that had been deprived from him. This is why we had what we call the dissolution of the monasteries. Everybody heard of that before, right?
Right.
The dissolution of the monasteries which was called the dissolution of the English Church of England. Because the English Church of England was composed of Benedictines, monasteries, Calvinists, friaries, monasteries, all these particular forms of our religious societies were affiliated with the Church of England. Everybody understand?
Understood.
Follow.
Follow.
Yes, Edwardian Wars. This was also called the Edwardian Wars. Let's go down a little further. Now, our last podcast, we was reading a case law dealing with Town of Paulette versus Clark, an 1850 case. Everybody remember that, right?
Correct.
Yes.
Mhm.
Okay,
Yes.
this is the reason why next Sunday school, everybody needs to do a 5-minute, well, study that case, because everybody needs to do a 5-minute dissertation or presentation of this case law in relevance to the affiliation to the Cestui Que. Because I'm teaching about the Cestui Que Trust now. So when you read that case, you are affiliated with the Cestui Que, because that case involves the Cestui Que. We're about to read it now. In the United States at that. All right. It said in 1815 case of the Town of Paulette versus Clark, the United States Supreme Court found that a royal grant of land to the Church of England and the colony of New Hampshire was not completed. The grant had been made prior to the American Revolutionary War, and the state of Vermont, as successor to the English crown, could claim the land and convey it to town of Paulette for schools. The Cestui Que nature of the trust, which held the land, was found to be void. The Episcopal Church in the town had no right or title to such land. I'll read it again. In 1815 case of Town of Paulette versus Clark, the United States Supreme Court found that a royal grant of land to the Church of England. So there was a grant of land. When you get a grant of land, it's usually given by a chart. And that's what they call a deed, a fiefment. Everybody understand?
Understood.
We just read that word in Cestui Que. And Cestui Que is a fiefment for a beneficiary, right? In regards to a glebe is what they call soil, land, or earth. That's where the word globe comes from, a globus, right? Because if you looking at the earth, how could you tell there's land if you standing on water? You can't see when you seeing the world from up in the outside the globe. You can't distinct the water, because water just look like water. But when you distinct the earth, you can tell the flowers, the trees, the mountains, the valleys, the ravines, etc. So when we talk about land, we need to be descriptive about land, because in regards to who owns the land, in this case law, it was given to what we call Episcopalian Church, which is actually part of what they call the Church of England in this 1850 case. And now we as the Church of England are scratching our head like, well, is they talking about us or not? Ain't y'all thinking that to yourself?
Correct.
Yes.
So we call ourselves the English Third Temple Church of England. Now they're talking about the Church of England, and they're talking about a royal grant to the Church of England, to the colony of New Hampshire. And they're saying that that land grant was held in the Cestui Que before the American Revolutionary War. So all the parties in this case, which y'all going to reveal, one of the person's name was Bennington Wentworth. Bennington Wentworth was a person who dealt with giving out land grants. Who is this person to be giving out land grants and he ain't no king? Who gave him the right to give out land grants when the land was held in the Cestui Que for the beneficiaries who were natural people, as we read in the Cestui Que? Did we just read that?
Right.
Now we read this court case, and it just said that the land was held in a trust prior to the American Revolutionary War. And it said that that church, the Episcopalian Church, which is now called the Propagation of the Gospel, which is right here. The first Episcopalian Church was in Virginia. And then they broke off to another branch called the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel versus the town of New Haven in 1823, a couple of years later. Now let's see what this case says. Archbishop, read this form.
The 1823 case of Society for the Propagation of the Gospel versus Town of New Haven looked at the issue of lands granted to an English corporate body, society, which had a religious purpose. The land had been granted by King George III of Great Britain in New Hampshire in 1761. It was held in corporation by a form of Cestui Que on 30th of October, 1794. The state of Vermont passed a statute whereby the land of the society would be appropriated by the state. The Supreme Court was divided in its opinion. It ruled that the property of English corporations at the time of the Revolution were protected by the Treaty of Peace, 1783. See Treaty of Paris, 1783, Treaty of Versailles, 1783. There could be no confiscations of such corporate holdings or lands because of the treaty.
Okay. Now, each and every one of y'all, on your own time, you go back and read that Treaty of Paris, and you read Article 4 and Article 9 and Article 10 of that treaty. And you will see that all the land that belonged to Great Britain was given back to Great Britain. Whatever belonged to the United States was given to the United States not to own. They had a legal interest in the land, not the right to ownership of the land. Why? Because the land was held in a trust. It just said it in the Treaty of Paris. All the people that are associated with the Society for the Propagation of the Gospel were colonists. All the people who were associated with the Episcopalian Church were colonists. How we know that? Let's go see.
And Adventures King, can you repeat those articles that you want us to focus on?
Article 4, Article 9, and Article 10
Thank you.
of the Treaty of Paris of 1783. Knowingly, that Treaty of Paris was ratified January the 14th, my birthday, 1784. So a year later, they ratified it again. And who ratified it? Thomas Jefferson, who got my surname, Jefferson. Let's see, he got a lot to do with this. Let's get into this. All right, so we're dealing with the Episcopalian Church, because it just said under case law. We're not dealing with this from some theosophical pinpoint, not from some philosophical pinpoint. We're dealing with it from law. We're dealing from what the courts say. Because remember, state and state and religion has been separated. Church and state have been separated. So if that's the case, why are they ruling on a religious issue in the state? And they saying in the state that the state ain't got no jurisdiction or no authority over land held in a trust. The state of Vermont was allowed to set up schools for the benefit of what was determined in the grant by the king, because it said that as a result of the Episcopal Church not filling the requirement of the Cestui Que Trust, it said that the king maintained the grant. He never gave it out. So that means that the king maintained this land because the ones who gave the land to were not the original grantees to the Cestui Que, because they had to be natural persons. We're going to prove it. A corporation soul is a natural person under the king's two bodies, a natural person and a body of politics. So since the United States, as well as the British government, were not dealing with natural people because they were corporations, they dissolved the Church of England. You're going to see it in the Town of Paulette versus Clark. It said in 1789, United States dissolved the Church of England as established by law. It didn't say theology. They didn't say by philosophy. They said as established by law, United States of 1789 dissolved the Church of England, just as much as they did in the British government of 1707. They say in this case law in 1815, a case law of the United States, they said that the United States and the British government dissolved the Church of England by law. If they did it by law, they did it as a result of their body of politics. So that means that if they dissolve the Church of England, that means the Church of England should not exist. Am I right?
Right.
It should not exist. But yet we're reading in 1815 about the Church of England, and they talk about the Episcopalian Church, as well as the propagation of the gospel, which was a branch that broke away from the Episcopalian Church. Well, let's go check out the Episcopalian Church.
Question, point of
Go ahead.
interest. How could they dissolve which they did not create?
Exactly.
Mhm.
Let's prove it. These are what we call material facts, conclusive presumptions by masters. I didn't write this. This is written before me. Come on, Joe. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see.
Yes.
Right. Everybody follow along. Try to go as smooth as possible. Everybody look in the box. Everybody see the box?
Yes.
Actually, in the crest, you see the flag of Scotland and the flag of England on the crest or shield. That, ladies and gentlemen, is called heraldry. Adultery. Am I saying the right, Archbishop?
Heraldry. Yep, you was right.
Heraldry.
Can you spell that?
Heraldry. Heraldry or heraldry. Okay. Arms of the Episcopal Church. Classification: Protestant with various theological and doctrinal identities, including Anglo-Catholic, liberal, and evangelical. Orientation: Anglican, Scripture, Holy Bible, theology, Anglican doctrine, polity, Episcopal. All right, keep going down. Let's go to history real quick. History. Oh, come on. What did I do? It's doing its own thing. Can everybody see this still?
Yes.
Okay, forgive me. I'm bad with this key. How do you go there? Okay, here we go. Okay, colonial era, very important. The Episcopal Church had its origin in the Church of England in the American colonies. Did it say states, y'all?
No.
Colonies.
It said colonies. We know that the church state changed from, we know that the state changed their name from states to colony, from colonies to states, September 20th, 1777. That's in New Jersey's Constitution of July 2nd, 1776 Constitution. They'll tell you right there in Yale. Now, Yale was the home of the Skulls and Bones, and the Skulls and Bones were members of what we call the Anglo-Saxon Protestants, which what we call WASP. Everybody, I talked about that in previous lessons. WASP is called the White Anglo-Saxon Protestants, who were your founding fathers were initiated or actually a part of. And WASP were part of what we call the Protestant Church. And they were a part of what they call the Fraternal Order, the Skulls and the Bones. All right. The Episcopal Church, as its origins in the Church of England and the American colony, it stresses continuity with the early Universal Western Church and claims to maintain apostolic succession. Let me go first. The first parish was founded in Jamestown, Virginia in 1607 under the Charter of Virginia Company of London. Everybody hear that? In Jamestown. We ain't got to go no further. All right. So we know that it's Episcopalian church. Let's go to the Church of England. Church of England. Let's go to the box. What is this polity, everybody?
Episcopal.
Episcopal.
Episcopal. So that means that this Church of England that we see here is also the same church of the Episcopalian Church. Am I right?
Right.
Yep.
Now everybody see right here, the English Church renounced papal authority in 1534 when Henry VIII failed to secure a papal annulling marriage to Catherine Aragon. The English Reformation accelerated under Edward VI regents before the brief restoration of papal authority. So that means that they were actually a part of the Protestant until they broke away under Henry VIII, and then they got back associated with it with the Restoration. Let me go here. All right, the founder of the Church of England, which is Episcopalian. Look at the region they cover: England, Isles of Man, Channel Island, the continental Europe, as well as Morocco. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Follow.
Yes.
So the
follow.
Church of England or the Episcopalian Church, which are one and the same, cover the jurisdiction, or what we call, because we know jurisdiction means law declared. And the law they're declaring right now is ecclesiastical law. You got civil law and ecclesiastical law. Ecclesiastical law is under the bishops, under what they call the popes, and the civil law is under the king. Because king didn't practice no abstract stuff, did he?
No.
What he practiced was what you can see, like what we practice it. What the Roman Catholic practice was based off the abstract, which was created under the Church of England, but goes back to who? Augustine of Canterbury. And Augustine of Canterbury lived in what? The 6th century AD. So they say he was the so-called founder of who? The Church of England. Until Henry VIII took back over it through the English Reformation. And the English Reformation was the dissolution of the monasteries, which is called the Church of England, because the Church of England was those monasteries that he dissoluted, which consist of Benedictines, abbeys, monasteries, friaries, convents, etc. Everybody understand?
Understood.
Understood.
Follow.
All right. So we know that the Church of England, which is also the Episcopalian Church, which are one and the same, was dissolved in the United States. Now we know the United States didn't dissolve the Episcopalian Church or the Church of England because they still exist in 1815 and in 1823 in United States case law, don't they?
They do.
Yes.
So the question we should be asking ourselves, what church did they dissolve in 1783, as well as the British government in 1707? It wasn't the Episcopalian Church or the Church of England we're reading about now, was it?
No.
No.
So what church did they dissolve? They dissolved our church, which we're about to show you right now.
Mm.
I hope y'all following the rabbit hole. Let's go here. So we did the Church of England and the Episcopalian Church, and they all stem from what? Augustine of Canterbury. Let's go here real quick. Augustine of Canterbury was the monk who became the first Archbishop of Canterbury in the year 597. He considered the apostle of the English and founder of the English Church. Did y'all hear that?
Yes.
That's wrong. He
He
didn't.
didn't say the Church of England. He didn't say the Church of England. He said the English Church. Well, why didn't you say right here the English Church of England? It just said the Church of England. Does that say English Church of England on this thing, y'all?
Right.
That one.
It just say Church of England, don't it?
Yep. And you can see in the box, it also said that he united the English church underneath the polity of the Pope, which meant that he came in and took something that was already there to put it underneath another jurisdiction.
We're about to show you. So it's my spring here, right? Bear with me. me do this. I didn't do it. Y'all bear with me. My screen shut down. Ain't this a trick? Bless you. My screen shut down on me, y'all, but I'm trying to pull it back up now. So, everybody see that? One second.
Not yet, no.
You got to share your screen.
Everybody see that?
Yep.
Okay, yes.
Okay. Unfortunately, my screen closed, so I'm gonna have to remember in my mind where I was at. So y'all gotta bear with me. I shouldn't have a problem. So we see Augustine of Canterbury. Augustine of Canterbury, as it states, Augustine was the priory of the monastery in Rome. When Pope Gregory the Great chose him in 595. Pope Gregory the Great chose him in 595 to lead a mission, usually known as the Gregorian Mission, to Britain to Christianize King Ethelbert and the Kingdom of Kent from Anglo-Saxon paganism. So that means the founder of the Church of England, Augustine of Canterbury, was authorized by Pope Gregory to have all the Anglo-Saxon converted to Christianity. Everybody see that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
And Pope Gregory the Great was from the Church of England. And the Church of England was under the policy of the Episcopal Church. Give me 1 second. I'm gonna see if I can shut my screen down and open it back up. Because I erased a lot of stuff. Archbishop, could you tap the time, the clock, or would that mess up? All right, my screen froze on me, but I'm going to try to navigate as best as I can. All right, so Augustine of Canterbury. We know the Church of England, which was actually part of the Episcopalian Church, they say was founded by Augustine of Canterbury. Now we know Augustine of Canterbury was commissioned by Pope Gregory the Great. Who is Pope Gregory the Great? Let's find out who he is. Pope Gregory the Great was the Bishop of Rome. Everybody see that?
Yeah.
Yes.
He was the Bishop of Rome. Now, who is the Bishop of Rome? What's the Bishop of Rome? The Bishop of Rome is the Pope. The
Right.
Pope, also known as Supreme Pontiff, Roman Pontiff, or Sovereign Pontiff, is a Bishop of Rome, historically the Patriarch of Rome, head of the worldwide Catholic Church. All right. Now, what's the Catholic Church? I'm just doing all I'm doing is simplify for you. The Catholic Church also known as the Roman Catholic Church, as its world's oldest, largest continuously functioning international institution. It has played a prominent role in the history and development of Western civilization. All right. If we go right here, St. Peter's Basilica. You guys looking in the box?
Follow.
St. Peter's Basilica, the largest Catholic church in the world. Classification, Catholic, Scripture, the Bible, theology, Catholic theology, the polity, Episcopal, government, the Holy See. So all these things going back to the Rome or the Pope is affiliated with the Roman Catholic Church. If they're affiliated with the Roman Catholic Church, they are associated with the Holy See. If they are associated with the Holy See, then they are associated with all those teachers that go back to what we call Paul. Because Paul was the one who crucified, or who was not crucified Jesus, but he the one who spoke or ridiculed all those who followed Jesus. Am I right? Everybody know the story about Jesus Christ being persecuted by Paul?
Mm-hmm.
I need to
Yes.
read that story. All right. So we're dealing with the Roman Catholic Church or the Pope or one and the same. And all these have their origin with the Church of England or the Roman Catholic Church. Now, why do I say that? Let's go to Westminster Abbey. I hate my screen closed on me, but it's the best I can do. All right, we're still talking about the Church of England. Now we know the story dealing with Pope Gregory I, dealing with I don't know why my screen keep doing this. I'm gonna close out. Archbishop, stop the screen again. Greetings, everyone. I apologize for the delay. I had a mishap with the computer, so I'm gonna try to do this with my notes that's left in my head. Unfortunately, the computer shut down, but I don't think I have a problem. We left off talking about the Church of England, and we know that under City of Paulette versus Clark, this was dealing out giving out glebe to the soil, and one of the parties, which was named was Benning Winchworth, which was a merchant, and according to the grant given by the monarch or the grantor at that particular time, was supposed to be given for the Church of England. But the court ruled that the parties, which was Benedict Winchworth, he was actually affiliated with the propagation of the gospel. It was the second court case that we just read about. The first court case that we read about was concerning the original Church of Episcopalian Church in regards to allowing soil to be given to create schools, which were, i.e., monastery schools, seminaries, Benedictine abbeys, for religious societies. But as we can see in the court case, that the court ruled that the state of Vermont claimed the sovereignty because the sovereignty went to the state, because no one fit the description in the original agreement and the terms and conditions set forth in the grant, which was at that time the king or the monarch. So as we can see in that case, when you read it on your own, it's going to specifically say that the United States dissolved the Church of England in 1789, because that's when the United States came into being. Before that, they were just independent states, and before that, they were independent colonies. Then it said, as it was also done by the British government in 1707, because Great Britain is our government, but it was just composed of the British monarchs sitting in that body of politics, which was composed of the English body of politics, but they were not. So that's why we're here to make the distinction between what Church of England are they talking about? Because we just, through our understanding, we just read that the Church of England has several interpretations. One is affiliated with the Episcopalian Church. Two is affiliated with the Church of England, which are really associated with the same church, which is the Roman Catholic Church, because when the church was dissolved or due to dissolution of the monastery, Henry VIII put all the assets of the Church of England in a trust. That trust is called a Cestui Que Trust, because the natural people of the estate was being taken over by way of infiltrating into what we call the bloodline. The bloodline stopped because of those marriages with the Roman Catholic churches, because Henry II married Eleanor of Aquitaine. Eleanor of Aquitaine was a Roman Catholic, and under Roman Catholic, it was going by these laws which are in question today. Everybody make sense?
Follow.
So
Follow.
it's our job here as the English Third Temple and members affiliated with the English Third Temple, as well as those who are watching us, to find out under what body of politics associated with the religious society are you a part of? Because we know that there's a separation of church and state. We know that the state is a corporation. We know that the state is a corporation. The religious society is not supposed to be a corporation, but it is now. Why? Because it's been taken over by Roman Catholic Protestants who dissolved all the assets for the beneficiaries who were supposed to be composed of natural people. So that meant that the body of politics, or the church is the body of politics of England. So when you say the Church of England, you're actually saying the body of politics of England. Does that make sense?
Follow.
Follow.
All right. So the body of politics, or the Church of England, was dissolved by the British government in the United States in 1789, as established by law. So we're not talking about some theology or some philosophy that we read about in the scriptures, or somebody else's interpretation or view about what happened to the church. We're taking it from a legal perspective, from a civil perspective, in order to find our paper trail back, because it really comes down to our paper trail. We want a legal paper trail, not some abstract paper trail based off some faith. Everybody follow? So we're going to go back to the origin of where the paper trail fell, because Jesus represented the word, was he? The word was God, and the word became flesh and dwelt amongst men. Am I right?
Well, I got to run it down. You know what
Say
I'm
it
saying?
again.
Fill the
Yes.
word.
Somebody said something?
That it came to fulfill the word.
Yes, he came to fulfill the word, not the parrot. The word, he's only fulfilling what the word said. The word said was the law. So you can't take law out of its context. The church and the religious society is taking the word law out of the context. This when it became abstract, and then it was given to us. Because it said in that case law, stare decisis, common law, and we know there's only one common law under case law, Smith versus Alabama. It says only one common law is the common law of England, which is adopted by the several states and is applied as their local laws, as their body of politics. Local laws, y'all, the city, the municipality, they should be practicing the common law of England. But they can't do it because ain't no English heirs successors. The only successors they have is those of the state, and the state prior to becoming the state was colonies. And colonies were composed of religious societies, which were those societies composed of that derived from the Church of England, which were Protestants and Roman Catholic, i.e. the Episcopalian Church. Everybody follow?
Follow.
Follow.
Okay, so where is our distinction? Because they're assuming that we're those Church of England, which is the Protestant Roman Catholic, which is known as the Episcopalian Church, which you see here today. Why? Because case law just said that these churches exist and they don't fit the description of the Cestui Que. It says it in the case law. And if you read the case law, it said that in order for the description to be met, there must be a parson. A parson is an incumbent. A parson is a corporation soul under civil law. And an ecclesiastical law is a bishop. And we know what the bishop is, Roman Catholic Church. And the first bishop of the Roman Catholic Church was, according to our history, was who? Pope Gregory I. And he was commissioned Augustine of Canterbury, the founder of the Church of England, which is the Episcopal Church. Everybody follow?
Follow.
And we know that he lived in the 6th century. That's around what? 600 AD. Now, in the year 600 AD, that's the year in the 15th century. So in 6th century AD, under the Gregorian calendar, is actually 15th century and the Berber calendar. Does that make sense? Because if Pope Gregory the First existed and the Gregorian calendar that was created by Pope Gregory the 13th didn't come out till 1582, and he was a pope as well. So I mean, all these popes from the Roman Catholic Church or the Catholic Church under the Holy See, because the word see means seat. That's what the word seat means, sedel, if I'm saying it right. It means a seat, a holy seat. Jesus said, it's upon Peter that my church will be built. Now, the Roman Catholic Church claims to be successors of St. Peter. Don't believe me? Let's go check it out. How much time we got, Archbishop?
We still got about at least an hour.
Oh, good. Sorry for that mishap, everybody, but I'm pretty sure I'll make amends for that. I had everything open like I usually have it. And you know, the devil's alive. We don't want this truth coming out, but I'm sorry. This is the word. You can't hide the word.
The Holy See is like the Vatican. So
The Vatican,
or
yeah.
the government.
Body politics. Any questions so far? Any questions, anybody?
They also maintain
Follow it, just
diplomatic
follow it.
relations.
Okay. What'd you say, Queen?
They maintain diplomatic relations.
Yeah, that's a all right, here we go. We're talking about the Catholic faith. The Catholic Church, also known as the Roman Catholic Church, you can say Church of England or the Episcopalian Church, is all one and the same. Am I right?
Mm-hmm.
I want y'all to
Wow.
understand that.
They got many
There's no difference.
It's like a tree.
A family tree. It's a tree of life, Kabbalah. Everybody know about Kabbalah, right?
Mhm.
Oh,
Now, what's number? The number is symbolic of Kabbalah, 32, right? The 33, what's it called? Kabbalah, the 32 something.
Okay.
It's something to do with the number 32.
Jewish tradition.
Interjection.
Go ahead, Sister Middleton.
Yes, it's 10 emanations, which is the and then there's 22 halves, which make up to 32 in the
Okay.
Kabbalah that connects
right.
all of them.
All right. Now, they say Jesus represents the tree of life. Now, when we deal with the history concerning Jesus, to us, Jesus is King Edgar the Peaceful, right?
Correct.
We're trying to, that's the abstract story to them is Jesus in the abstract, but to us, the concrete Jesus is King Edgar the Peaceful. All right. So now King Edgar was born in the year 943. He died in the year 975. The year 975 subtracted from 943 is the number 32. So King Edgar lived to be 32 years of age. Everybody understand?
Wow.
Yes. Follow.
All right. It says here, the Catholic Church, also known as the Roman Catholic Church, is the largest Christian church with 1.3 billion baptized Catholics worldwide, as the world's oldest and largest continuously functioning international institution. When we talk about that, we're talking about the Roman Catholic, Church of England, Episcopalian Church, Methodist, all those branches stem from that Church of England. Everybody follow?
Follow.
Any
Follow.
denomination you see today all stems from the Church of England. But Rome, from the Roman, and we're reading right now, Roman Catholic Church where it stems from. So it says the church consists of 24 particular churches in almost 3,500 dioceses and eparchies around the world. Around the world, y'all, not just in Europe, around the world. The Pope, who is the Bishop of Rome, is the chief pastor of the church. Chief pastor. Now, you look in any state of every state in the United States, all you see is diocese. Am I right?
Correct.
Correct.
Dioceses are headed by bishops, who are priests, who are under the jurisdiction of ecclesiastical law, which they call canon law, which is overseen by the Church of England. Well, what Church of England? We just associated Church of England with Henry VIII, the Episcopalian Church, Augustine of Canterbury, Pope Gregory I, which is associated with their calendar, the Gregorian calendar, with the Gregorian Mission. You had the Gregorian Mission, you had to have the Gregorian calendar to go with the Gregorian Mission. Am I right?
Correct.
Correct.
So what was here? Because we know missionaries deal with churches. When people come over and colonize, they're called missionaries. When you have a mission, you have to have an ambassador. Am I right? This is modern talk.
Follow.
You have ambassadors for, in order to have an ambassador, you got to have an embassy. Because these are foreign nationals, because a foreign national is a foreigner. A foreigner has a religion that they come from. They all have a religion, and their religion is governed in a particular church. They might the name might be different, but the origin and identity is still the same. It all goes back to that Church of England. So now we want to make sure that we don't go back to that origin, because they got on the similarity of our church, but not the identity. It all comes up to identity, not similarity. They're assuming that we got the same similarities of that Church of England, which has the identity of us as the true church. Do that make sense? Did I confuse y'all with that?
It's crystal.
Okay. Go further. So it says that the core belief Catholicism are founded in the Nicene Creed. The Catholic Church teaches that it is the one holy Catholic and apostolic church founded by Jesus Christ. Now, who is our Jesus Christ?
King Gregory the Peaceful.
Okay. So it said that the core belief of the Catholicism, matters if you call them the Church of England today or the Episcopalian Church today, they all stem from Catholicism under the jurisdiction of the Pope, under the Holy See. And the Holy See represents the keys. Who had the keys? Peter, am I right?
Correct.
And Jesus told Peter, I'm giving you the keys of heaven. I'm going to give you the keys. And you're going to be the key, and the key means not just a regular key, but key means information. A key reference. He said the core belief of the Catholicism are founded in the Nicene Creed, that's 323 AD, Council of Nicene. The Catholic Church teaches that it is the one holy Catholic and apostolic church founded by Jesus Christ and his Great Commission. That is, bishops are the successors of Christ's apostles, and that the Pope is the successor to St. Peter, upon whom primacy was conferred by Jesus Christ. I'm going to read that again. The Catholic Church teaches that it is the one holy Catholic and apostolic church founded by Jesus Christ and his Great Commission, and that its bishops are the successors of Christ's apostles, and that the Pope is the successor to the St. Peter. Now, Jesus gave the keys to St. Peter, and the Pope is the successor to St. Peter, and St. Peter and the bishops are successors to the Pope, right?
Right.
Because the Pope are successors of St. Peter. We got a problem with that. How we know that? Let's go here. Because we know that you have a St. Peter's Basilica. You have a St. Paul's Cathedral. Both of these basilicas and cathedrals were built in the 16th century. These are saints, St. Paul and St. Peter, when their cathedrals and basilicas were built in the 16th century. But these martyrs go back to the 1st century. St. Peter's go back to 1 AD.
Right.
Am I right?
Right.
Now, if it's 1 AD in the Gregorian year, What year is it in the Berber year?
951.
950, 951. Now let's look at, I gotta go here. One second. Let me go here first. Westminster Abbey. Chronologically of Jesus. This is how y'all supposed to study, everybody. This is how you study.
Point of interest, King.
Go ahead.
When you, speaking about St. Peter, you know, it kind of brought to my mind St. Petersburg, also in Russia. When you mentioned the Cold War earlier, was the war between the United States and Russia.
Yes.
So that's what kind of like brought interest to me. Would that also have something to do with it?
Yes, because remember, when you get into the Roman invasion, it's called the East and West Schisms. And that was over in those areas. They were all fighting over the interpretation of the theology or the philosophy of what they call Jesus Christ. But they didn't have no head. It was abstract. So how are you going to have some type of clarity in the truth when the truth is abstract? It's all based off faith. I mean, belief, not faith or fruition. It's all belief. Without belief and fruition, you ain't going to have, without faith and fruition, you ain't going to have no belief. You need fruition and faith for that belief. It can't work no other way. You're going to believe in something, but don't do anything to help that belief. It ain't going to come true. You want to believe you'll be a basketball player, then put that work in. You start putting that work in, oh, well, I might can do this. Now I got that faith. Now you see you winning. You dominating the courts now. You don't need no faith. Now it's fruition. Just what y'all doing now, I'm taking y'all through that 3-step process. Belief, faith, and fruition. If you study what I'm telling you on belief, you will develop that faith, and then the fruition of that faith will come true. And I'm showing you now, I'm bringing this to you from the abstract of what y'all believe, to have faith in the abstract of what y'all thought y'all believe, to have fruition in it, because what you believe in is coming to true. Because you're not only believing it, you're seeing it, and you can touch it now. Because touch is just a faculty. Taste, touch, smell, sight, all one faculty. Touch. So when I'm touching you physically, I'm touching you spiritually, I'm touching you physically, because they're all the one same. There's a frequency, energy. This is the reason why King Edgar lived to be 32 degrees. Water freezes at what? 32 degrees. So that means that this information, and he said he's the living water. That life-giving water. When King Edgar was teaching, all that life-giving water was being received. Why? Because his kingdom was peaceful. Was it not?
Correct.
There was law and order. When he got off the scene, it went back to hell.
Yep.
All right? That means our state of existence became solidified. It became what? Stone. And now, in order for us to become stone, we got to go back to where we froze up as a stone. And the only one can be that is what we call acetylene, noble stone. And we know in the abstract form, we go back to St. Peter, because Peter means rock. Rock means stone. Am I right? Okay, let's really go down with this. So we already know the history dealing with Jesus Christ. We know that Jesus Christ was crucified by Pope Pilate, right?
Correct.
Now, we just read about the Catholic Church, and it said the Catholic Church was successors to St. Peter. And Jesus said he would build his church on Peter. Peter was his first apostle. Now, everybody's dedicating churches to St. Peter. The one that Rome dedicated to St. Peter wasn't built to the 16th century. Am I right?
Correct.
St. Paul's wasn't built to the 16th century, but Westminster was built in 960. Look at the date there. Everybody see that?
Yes.
960. Guess when King Edgar, let's go here. Let's get even better. King's two bodies. I see this.
Yep.
New Minister's Charter is an Anglo-Saxon illuminated manuscript that was likely composed by Bishop Ethelwald. You know, bishops deal with Rome, right? If you're a bishop, you're a Rome. You deal with the Roman Catholic Church till you come into the English Church, then you restore, because you had the bad bishops. This is where you get into what they call the War of the Bishops with King John. All those barons from the Roman Catholic Church under Pope Innocent III were rolled. John wasn't with that, but he was forced to do so. But within that charter, it was agreed that the English Church, it didn't say Church of England, it said the English Church should be free. So what church are you a part of in England? Because we still in England, y'all. England ain't just over there. England has overseas possessions. And we know that under the Ecclesiastical Restraint Act created by Henry VIII, which we talked in our last class, it said the King of England, his kingdom is an empire. And he said, and all appeals must be made to the king. It must not be made to the bishops of Rome or to a foreign court of the Rome. So I mean that all the courts we got here today is Roman courts. Because the states was at one time a state church, which was called the Church of England. But that Church of England was under the jurisdiction of those monarchs who were Protestant and Roman Catholic, going up back from King James all the way back to Henry VIII or Henry VII. All Protestants. Everybody follow?
Follow.
Okay, so here we have New Minister's Charters, and this is the reference to the King's two bodies. I did in the last podcast, I talked about Catherine Carcott. She makes mention of the King's two bodies going back to the New Minister's Charters, which you see here. This is Peter with the keys, and this is St. Mary, the Immaculate Conception. All right? And that's King Edgar, Jesus Christ, our Jesus Christ. Why is this important? This is the 966 AD. AD means Annos Dominios, which means in the year of our Lord. That means that the Lord was there on earth. Wasn't no spook at that time. He was right there. Now remember, go back to here, Westminster Abbey. Westminster Abbey, formerly titled Collegiate Church of St. Peter at Westminster, is a large, mainly Gothic Abbey church in the city of Westminster, London, England, just to the west of the Palace of Westminster. All right, go to the box. Country, England, denomination, Church of England, churchmanship, high church. So when you make a reference to the Church of England, you need to be specific. Everybody follow?
Follow.
Because if you're not, then they're going to scoot you right up in here. It said the church was originally part of the Catholic Benedictine Abbey when Rome got part of it, which was dissolved in 1539 to the Protestant church under Henry VIII. See how Rome swept in? It says it says the church was originally part of the Catholic Benedictine Abbey. We know that's a bunch of bullcrap because if you say Catholic, you go back to Rome. And if you go back to Rome, you got to go back to Pope Gregory I, because Pope Gregory I had all the Anglo-Saxons convert to Christianity. Everybody follow?
Um,
I hope y'all are, because if you don't, y'all gonna have some problems. All right, let's continue to go. All right, so Westminster Abbey. Let's go down to the dissolution of the monastery, where it's most important. Now we're talking about our church. Okay, we're talking about our church, the English church, Westminster Abbey. Westminster Abbey was built by, let's go back up here. History. A later tradition claims that Aldrich, a young fisherman on the River Thames, now the River Thames or the River, they pronounce it Thames, is drying up now, y'all, in England. It's drying up. The movie London Bridge is the movie Valhalla. If you watch it on TV, it's going to mention it in Westminster when we go back there. I think, what was that at? We talked about Valhalla. I've seen it somewhere. Well, we'll get back to it. Anyhow, dealing with Westminster Abbey, it says, a later tradition claimed that Aldrich, a young fisherman on the River Thames, had a vision of St. Peter near the site. Abstract.
Norseman mentioned Valhalla.
Norseman, yeah. There seems to have been quoted as the origin of the salmon that Thames fishermen offered to the Abbey in later years, a custom still observed annually by the Fishmongers Company. The record's origin of the Abbey date to 960 or early 970, when St. Dunstan and King Edgar installed a community of Benedictine monks on our site. So that means Jesus Christ had his own set of monks. The word Benedictine monks means black monks.
mm.
Say it again, Sister Middleton.
No, I just agreed and just said,
All right, let's get there. Now, I said St. Peter. They ain't making references on St. Peter's in the Bible, are they? They're associating St. Peter with Westminster Abbey, a physical church that you can go right to England right now and see and touch. Let's go back up to it. What it says, where is that? Founded in 960. Dedicated to who? St. Peter. Now, hold on. I got to scratch my head. Because Europe then built St. Peter's Basilica to the 16th century. And they dedicated to St. Peter. And they claimed that the Roman Catholic St. Peter Church were successors to St. Peter. Well, if you're a successor, then how could you be the Church of England when Jesus Christ said that he gonna build his church on St. Peter, who he gave the keys to? Now, the church that King Edgar built was dedicated to St. Peter. So shouldn't it be the church that the Church of Jesus Christ was built on?
yes.
Westminster Abbey? How I know that? Let's go there. Let's take it there. AD 26. The Gregorian year is AD 26. We know that year never existed because you need a Gregorian calendar for that to exist. Am I right?
Yes.
So that means there was no Pope Gregory the 13th. There was no Pope Gregory the 12th, going all the way down to the 1st. Why? Because there was no Church of England in the time of the 6th century with Pope Augustine. They backdated that when Henry VIII dissolved our church by him breaking away from the Roman Catholic Church, which never existed. Why? Because they all claim to be successors of the original church that was dedicated to St. Peter in the 9th century in 960, we see here on the Westminster Abbey by Jesus Christ himself, who was King Edgar the Peaceful, which is our reincarnation of Jesus Christ, which I'm the reincarnation of in this day and time. All right. Now check this out. You see right here, 26 AD, which we know it ain't 26 AD. That means what year it is? 975, 76.
Mm.
King Edgar died in what year? 975.
975. Mm.
Now, who was crucified in the year 26? Jesus Christ. How we know that? Let's go back to the customary of Jesus Christ. Chronology of Jesus Christ. I do not play when it comes to this. Read this, Archbishop.
The prefecture of Pontius Pilate. Our four canonical gospel says that Jesus was crucified during the prefecture of Pontius Pilate, the Roman governor of Roman Judea. In the Antiquities of the Jews, written about AD 93, Josephus states, Article 18.3, that Jesus was crucified on the orders of Pilate. Most scholars agreed that while this reference includes some later Christian interpolations, it originally included a reference to the execution of Jesus under Pilate. In the 2nd century, the Roman historian Tacitus in the Annals, AD 116, described the persecution of Christians by Nero and stated that Jesus had been executed on the orders of Pilate during the reign of Tiberius, emperor from September 18th AD 14 to March 16 AD 37. According to Flavius Josephus, Pontius Pilate was a governor of Judea from AD 26 until he was replaced by Marcellus either in AD 36 or AD 37, establishing the date of the death of Jesus between AD 36 and AD 37.
Okay, so somebody who never existed said that Jesus died in AD 26. Why? Because he crucified himself. Right? Based off the scripture, it said Pontius crucified Jesus in the year 26 AD. Right? So let's go to the year. Because we know it ain't no year 26, because there ain't no popes of Rome existing at that time. If there was, show me this. It's 26 AD. What year is it? 976. King Edgar lived from 943 to 975. This is the year, 976. Now, guess who, there you see, Pontius Pilate appointed the prefect of Judea. Did they say anything about him crucifying Jesus right here? No. Why you ain't put that down there that you crucified Jesus? Because there was no Jesus Christ there. The Jesus Christ that existed was King Edgar the Peaceful. How we know? Let's go back to Westminster Abbey. Because he built this church.
Wow. And they did all this to hide his story.
Mm-hmm.
Before we go, hold on. 26 AD.
That's the
Before
word.
we leave this date, this calendar, we are English, Anglo-Saxon Berbers. How do I know this? Everybody look on this calendar. Do you see an English calendar here?
No.
At all.
Nope.
Because the English calendar is a Gregorian calendar. The only calendar that existed prior to the English was the Berber calendar. So we don't throw the baby out with the bathwater. So we're going to say English. Why? Because right now, Berber is spelled in English. So we're going to take both of them. Why? Because we speak English today. You know what I'm saying? And the time immemorial, going back to Richard I, that's how far we need to go back. And we know Richard I is the son of John. John, the son of Henry II, and Henry II, the son of Godfrey, which we descend down from. And that's where the agnatic succession starts. It starts with John. All those who came after John will inherit their birthright based off their descendant to Godfrey, the fifth caravan Jew. And we know Godfrey is Jefferson. Jefferson is son. Now let's go back to Westminster Abbey, since we know where the original church lies in, and find out where we went wrong. Because we know this was a church that was dedicated to St. Peter. And it was built in the same time of King Edgar the Peaceful, 960. Right? Let's go down here. '16th century. Now, we all talking about Westminster Abbey. When we say Westminster Abbey, we're talking about all the churches which will consist of abbeys, Benedictine monasteries, convents, friaries. Things of those nations all were created for the community that will consist of parishes. right? But they wasn't dealing with it from an abstract. They just created that to replace the concrete. So, and they did that by way of what we call the dissolution of the monasteries. It says here, Westminster Abbey, also affiliated with the Church of England, said that in 1535, during the assessment attended on the dissolution of the monastery, the Abbey annual income was equivalent to whatever that is in 2021. So that means it's still relevant today. All those assets, which we call free kamasukas, are still going to the church. But what church? The Roman Catholic Church. Why? Because ain't no heirs and successors. Ain't no trustees to administer the trust on behalf of the heirs and successors. So that means all the assets that's in the estate, i.e. property, is distributed to what the sovereign state. Why? It didn't go to those other religious society. Why? Because it stated that in the city of Paulette. It didn't go to the churches of England that were created by the Episcopalian Church. It didn't go to the propagation of the gospel, which were created in the founding colonies in Virginia. Why? Because they were all nothing more than corporations, companies that were made up of entities, legal entities, because it said a Cestui Que Trust can go to either one. A beneficiary that consists of a legal or a natural person or a legal entity. So which one are we? Are we legal entities associated with the Church of England under the Roman Catholic Protestant Church, or are we beneficiaries under the natural church going back to the Church of Westminster Abbey that was run by a natural king, such as King Edward the Peaceful, which was the king? He made up the natural body of the king to govern the natural body of politics, which was made up of the people in the community, which made sure that the laws of the body politics were followed. Everybody follow?
Follow.
But as a result of us as a part of the body politics being dissolved into corporate fictions, all our assets were exceeded. And we are the assets. Why? Because we know our people were sold into slavery, right? And slaves were considered assets. So let's look in the 1540s. In 1540, Henry VIII assumed direct royal control in 1539 and granted the abbey the status of a cathedral. Hold on. Cathedral? What happened to the, we know the cathedrals go back to the Roman Catholic Church. We go back to the Benedictine monasteries, abbeys. So now they got us all mixed up together now. That's why 16:1-28 said, right state of the charters of Great Britain, save from repeal, an act to incorporate trustees of religious societies for property held in religious societies and corporation place thereof. So they're saying that the property held in corporations are religious societies. But they're not our religious societies, because our religious society is run by a corporation soul. And we know a corporation soul has to have a head. A body without the head is dead. Everybody follow? Okay, let's move forward. It's getting bad right here, y'all. By granting Abbey cathedral status, Henry VIII gained the excuse to spare him from, remember, he styled himself as what? Head of the Church of England. The supreme head. You have the supreme governor and you got the supreme head. When he dissolved the Church of England, there was no more supreme head. Now you only got heads of the state. Supreme governor, which is under the Commonwealth, Queen Elizabeth II, and under the head of the state, under the president, George, what's his name? Who the president? What's his name?
President now?
Who the president now? Biden,
Biden.
yeah. He's the head of state, just like Queen Elizabeth is the head of state for the Commonwealth. Why? Because church and state has separated. So they got to have a ceremonial head for the state, and they got to have a ceremonial head for the church. And both of them are actually of the same body, without a head. Why? Because who controls the body? The crown. And who is successor to the crown? The United States. How we know that? United States versus Juan Kim Ark said that. And they said it's fixed in nationality. That's case law or common law from the common people who are English heirs successors. But ain't no English people on the census chart. They all became extinct. Why? Because they're not a part of the original church.
Exactly.
Y'all all going to these other churches, which are all affiliated with the Roman Catholic Church, Protestant Church, Methodist Church, Protestant, all denominations, all stem from that one church that were created after the dissolution of the monastery of our English churches in the 15th century. Everybody follow?
Follow.
Okay? Let's come to our closing. So how did this come to be? It's said, the already old, it said after the 1550 turbulent times, Westminster, the diocese was dissolved in 1550. Did y'all hear that?
Mm-hmm.
It said Westminster. What does the West mean? Aren't we west from Europe, from England?
Mm-hmm.
We're on the west side. We are the ministers from the west. Our ministry on the Western Hemisphere has been dissolved by the diocese put in place by way of the dissolution of the monasteries on account of Henry VIII. Everybody follow? Because he dissolved the monastery. We just read it here, dealing with Westminster Abbey. And it just said here, Westminster Abbey diocese were dissolved in 1550. But the Abbey was recognized in 1552, retroactively to 1550, as second cathedral of the Diocese of London until 1556. What is the Diocese of London, real quick?
London Company, corporate charter, granted under James.
The Diocese of London forms part of the Church of England, province of Canterbury in England. Let's go to history real quick.
Protestant.
Includes City of London, in which lies its cathedral, St. Paul's. Go to St. Paul's Basilica, right there. Everybody see that?
Mm-hmm.
So we ain't gonna even indulge in that. We're gonna find out where we went wrong. You ever heard the expression, rob Peter to pay Paul?
Yes.
That's where it comes from.
Wow.
And this is in closing. All right, also stone. You know, the stone is called the coronation stone. Where all the kings take their coronation.
Mm-hmm.
They turn the stone of coroners to a slave block. Now, instead of sitting on the stone, we're standing on it for sale. And who did that? The Scottish stone. King James and them did it because they gave us an abstract story. Now we became the Jews on the Exodus. An Exodus is also called a crusade. We know that the Jews were all expelled by Edward I in 1290. In England, not in what they call Canaan, some so-called made-up believe land. Okay, here we go. After 1550, Westminster Diocese was dissolved in 1550, but the Abbey was recognized in 1552, retroactively to 1550, as the second cathedral of the Diocese of London until 1556. The already old expression, robbing Peter to pay Paul, may have been given a new lease of life when money meant for the Abbey, which is dedicated to St. Peter, was diverted to the treasury of St. Paul Cathedral. Everybody hear that?
Yep.
The Abbey was restored to the Benedictine under the Catholic Mary I of England, but they were again elected under Elizabeth I in 1559. In 1560, Elizabeth reestablished Westminster as a royal peculiar, a church of the Church of England responsible directly to the sovereign, rather than the diocese bishop, and made it a collegiate church of St. Peter that is non-cathedral church with an attached chapter of canons headed by a dean. Now they want to call it a collegiate church of St. Peter. You can't have that. Why? Because it's already established in 960. But Westminster Abbey. Collegiate church, right there. So we had ours before they had theirs. But the only way it can come to life is you come back into the church. Because the church without the people is what? An empty hall. It's empty. Our body of politics, our church has been empty. Why? Because the citizens have become citizens instead of subjects. You have become a citizen instead of a subject. As a subject, you are entitled to the estate that was left to you by the grantor, as we see in the City of Paulette case in regards to fulfillment of the Cestui Que Trust. And the word Cestui Que means he was alive. So y'all have your choice. Or y'all want to be accounted amongst the living or amongst the dead? And with that, I digress. Queen, you get the first. Then it will pass to Archbishop, Brother Burgess. Queen, Archbishop, CA, Brother Burgess, Countess Walker, Countess Allen, Countess Middleton, and then we can go with Brother Scott, Brother Gray, and then I'll go on as I'll pick as we go along. All right, with that, I digress. Queen.
Another beautiful lesson from the king. He touched on the two king's bodies again, body politic. I didn't know that it meant validity, which is also legal theory of the corporation. Also, the Treaty of Paris. I gotta go back and read that, the Articles 4, 9, and 10. We also talked about the Augustine of Canterbury, who was the founder of the English Church.
The Church of England.
Okay. Oh, it's the Church of England.
Yeah,
Okay.
he said he found
And
the English
I
Church.
didn't know
Yeah,
all
these
this.
are
And I
weird.
went to a Catholic high school, believe it or not. Graduated from Catholic high school, and I didn't even know all of this. But it's very interesting. I just got to go back and read and study a little bit more. And you also said that the Catholic Church was successor to St. Peter, or
Yes.
St. Peter, the natural person, not Peter.
Well, there was no natural person called St. Peter.
Not the person or
Yeah.
parson.
But
But-
St. Peter's represent the ideology of a person that Jesus admired as solidified in his faith.
Okay.
You know what I'm saying? And that's the reason why he was given the iconograph of being solidified as Jesus' rock, because he held on to the faith. But we know that abstract story was a story symbolic of the Westminster Abbey, and we know that the so-called religious belief or the abstract story was created in Westminster Abbey when they called it the Westminster Assembly. Let me just tap that in real quick before the next speaker go on.
But what happens to this one, the statute and restraint of appeals then?
Oh, very good question, Sister Queen. The ecclesiastical restraint of appeals, which we discussed in our last lesson, is very important, because this statute was passed by Henry VIII, the one who dissolved all our estates or assets and put into what they call a Cestui Que Trust.
Okay.
And it said, let me just read it from the phone. I'm gonna read what it says. Each and every one of y'all read what it says. Now, this is the same person who dissolved our Church of England and put it into a trust. And what exists now are those societies that he created, which is called now the Church of England under the Episcopalian teachings, which were not the ones who were considered to be the heirs and successors. How we know that? Because they still exist today. So he put a clause out there under the Restraints Act, and this is basically what it says. I'm gonna read the second part of it. By his royal, no.
And that's from the extract in the statute, restraint of appeals.
Yes,
He's reading from the extract.
It says, whereby diverse sundry old authentic histories and chronicles, it is manifestly declared and expressed that this realm, remember when we first talked about the body of politics, it gave us three: city, state, and realm. We're not part of the realm. We're part of a city and state, but that's not what we're supposed to be a part of, because that's not our body of politics. Our body of politics associated with the realm. And we know our body of politics associated with the realm was dissolved by Henry VIII through the dissolution of the monastery, which goes back to Westminster Abbey, which was founded in 960 by the true Jesus Christ, which is King Edward the Peaceful, which I'm the reincarnation of. So being that I'm the reincarnation, i.e. the personification, i.e. the incorporation by way of our certificate of incorporation under 16:143.789, it allows us the right that we had and our constituent corporations going back to time immemorial, and all the rights, powers, immunities, privileges they had back then, we have right now by way of incorporation, i.e. by way of incarnating into that tenure or incumbent as the parson, i.e. corporation soul, as the crown, because the crown is a corporation soul. And as corporation soul, you have all authority, executive, legislative, and judicial authority over crown land. And crown land is intel. Intel is inherited and it passes by way of operation of law, just like a birthright does, by way of nationality, which is called just sanguineous, birthright by the blood, not by just being born on the soil. There's a difference, just soil and just sanguineous. So it says, by King Henry VIII, the one who took all our assets and put it to a trust, he stated, whereby diverse, sundry, and authentic histories and chronicles, it is manifestly declared and expressed that this realm of England is an empire, and so has been accepted in the world. Y'all hear that?
Mm-hmm.
He said the world, governed by one supreme head. It didn't say governor. All you got governing the states right now is governors. They got their own body of politics, just like the city, county. The city run by the mayor. So how the heck you get a mayor and a governor when none of them are sitting in the chair as the king? Because we're just reading on ecclesiastical law, and we know church and state is separated. Henry VIII, who dissolved ecclesiastical law, said that the king of England was an empire, and so has been accepted by the world, governed by the supreme head and king, having the dignity and royal estate of the imperial crown of the same, unto whom a body of politics compact all sorts of decrees of people, divided into terms and by names of spirituality and temporality, but be bounded and ought to bear next to God a natural, humble obedience, i.e. allegiance. Citizenship determines allegiance, and from allegiance comes protection. He being also institute and furnished by the goodness and sufferance of Almighty God, with plenary, whole, and entire power, preeminence, authority, and prerogative, and jurisdiction. The body spiritual, whereof having power, when any cause of law divine have to come into question. And the laws temporal for trial of property of lands. Y'all hear that? When you're dealing with an issue in regards to an estate, i.e. land, then would be based off the laws governing the body politic under the king. And the king's politics, body politics govern the realm, the king, as well as the empire, and not just the empire, the world. I didn't write that. King Henry VIII wrote it. He also stated that for the trial of property of lands and goods, and for the conservation of the people and of this realm of unity and peace, without repine or spoil, was he yet administered, adjudged, or executed by sundry judges and ministers of the other part of the said body of politics. You heard that? The other said body of politics, not ours, theirs. So it says that subject to the other body of politics called the temporary, meaning that they're only temporary. And both their authorities and jurisdictions do conjoin together in due administration of justice to one to help the other. So that means that if the body politics of the temporal and spiritualities come in conflict with the body of politics of the king, that temporality and spirituality body politics ought to conform themselves to the body politics of the king. Make sense?
Yes.
Okay. By his royal assent and by his assent of the Lord spiritual and temporal and the commons and this present parliament assembled, and by authorities of the same enact, established, and ordained that all causes testamentary deal with somebody who created the will. That's what it means, the last will and testament. All matters dealing with testamentary, causes of matrimony and divorces, rights of tithes, obligations, or abentions already commenced, moved, depending, being happening, or hereafter coming into contention, or debate, or question within this realm, or within any of the king's dominions, or marshes of the same, or elsewhere, whether they concern the king, our sovereign lord, his heirs and successors, or any other subject or resident within the same, of what decrees whatsoever they be, should be from henceforth heard, examined, discussed, clearly and finally and definitely adjudged and determined within the king's jurisdiction and authority and not elsewhere. And foreign inhibitions, appeals, sentences, summons, citations, suspensions, interdictions, excommunications, restraints, judgment, or any other process, impediments of what nature, names, qualities, or conditions whatsoever they be, from the See of Rome or any other foreign court or potentate of this world, or from in or out of this realm, or in any other king dominion or marches of the same, to the See of Rome or to any other foreign court or potentate, to the let or to the let of impediments thereof, in any wise notwithstanding. And if shall happen any person or persons hereafter to pursue or provoke any appeal contrary to this effect or this act, or refuse to obey, execute, or observe all the comprised within the same concerning the said appeal, provocation, and other foreign processes, to be sued out of this realm for any of the causes aforesaid, that then every said person or person so doing, refusing or offending contrary to the true meaning of this act, their procurers, faulters, advocates, counselors, or abettors in every of them shall incur into the pain, forfeitures, and penalties ordained and provided in the said statute made in the said 16th year of King Richard II, and with like process to be made against the said offenders as in the same statute made in the said 16th year more plainly appears. So that means to tell you, as set forth by King Richard II. King Richard II is the son of Eleanor Province of King Richard II is the son of Edward III. Edward III descended down from Edward II, Edward I, who are all sons of Henry III, son of John, son of Henry II, son of Godfrey V, Count of Anjou, where I descended down from. So as you can see, all the rights that we had that they created under ecclesiastical canon law, under the Church of England, which is the abstract, Henry VIII, who created the abstract, created what they call our receptorate statute or reconciliation statute that gives us the ability to go back and get those rights and amenities that were preserved through time immemorial through this actual act of parliament, which is the ecclesiastical act of restraint that allow us to be able to get due process of law in civil law or courts of law and in a court under the king's court and not a foreign court, so that all our rights that were reserved through time immemorial can be reserved in this present day and time. And with that, I digress. Oh, that was a lot. Sorry about that. All right. Archbishop.
So once again, brothers and sisters, I know it's a lot for you to be able to take in. But once again, the king has done a marvelous job and showing you the fact that the two bodies, this is also going back to you have to identify what church you're part of, because not every church is affiliated to the true king's two bodies. You have the abstract church, which is the Roman Catholic Church, and then you have the concrete church, which is the English church that predates the Roman Catholic Church, that was usurped via the Augustine mission that had ended up placing the Anglo-Saxon tribes underneath the jurisdiction of the papal at that moment. And as you see throughout time, we have been trying to stay separate from them, but what they end up doing was becoming a semblance or a semblance of us, and to the point that they had enough to stand on so they can kick us out, dissolve our monasteries, everything that we had that we kept ourselves connected back to our historical identification. And now as you see today as us as being reincarnated through the king as corporation soul, we have the rights as well as those immunities that can be brought back into existence, and we can utilize the treaties via the Treaty of Paris that help us be able to bring all this back to life. So once again, for those here who are paying attention, it's going to be tough if you don't sacrifice your worldly desires and start putting the time to the side for you to actually put your studies into full gear. Because if you lack the king's consciousness and you don't know your history, then that means you're an imposter in the meantime until you can come and prove yourself otherwise. And so with that being said, we love you. And I digress, and I leave the rest of the closing to C.A. Murphy, as well as the rest of the brothers and sisters on here on the panel. And like we say here all the time, it's better for you to not know this than to know this and not do anything with it. I digress.
Well said, Archbishop. C.A. Murphy from the House of Murphy.
Muted, no.
Peace and love. Peace and love. Can y'all hear me well?
Yes, sir. Greetings, Noble.
Greetings.
All right. Peace and love, everyone. Yes, a lot taken from the marvelous lesson. To much is given, much is required. Study to show ourselves approved. Those in communion and in council all have the great jubilee of hearing the word. So all those at the sound of my voice, we give honor and praise to the word that we receive today. I could touch on, the King's lessons, but obviously the King has done it himself. So the review is up to thine own self. So I would implore that everyone take the time to do their studies. I'm sure no one expects you to grasp it overnight, but it is through diligent study and repetitiveness that we practice perfectly we practice perfectly this law that we acquire through history and the study of law. As we know, history and law go hand in hand. So definitely looking forward to following up with the study. Westminster Abbey being the foundation through holding our trust entail for the heirs, not just the successors in place thereof. King Edgar the Peaceful, as the Jesus concrete, opposed to the Jesus abstract. There was a lot done to hide the story of King Edgar the Peaceful and that peaceful realm and the laws which are held in trust for the beneficiaries. So one, dogma is what has been given to the masses in place thereof of history of England and its hereditament secure the rights of the heirs. So the changing from cathedrals to abbeys, abbeys to cathedrals. When you think of cathedral, you think of entertainment. When you think of an abbey, it's spelled ab-bay. And when I think of ab-bay, I think of father governing, governing under the father, the circle, the family, the church, which predates the Roman Inquisition, the Augustinian mission and the Gregorian mission. So, and the last one, robbing Peter to pay Paul, I thought that was really profound, just watching that, just talking about the feudalism and the theft of estate. It was done, they usurped us through marriage, but once they got into our family bloodline, we're able to do the bidding of Roman law by implementing Roman law into aggregating Roman law into our judicial proceedings or our privy councils or our parliamentary acts. So all of these things led to the spoilage, theft and spoilage, free and common soldiers of the king's soils and lands and commodities. So again, it's a beautiful lesson, a beautiful delineation of facts and history and law. And I thank you, King, for your diligent study. Thank you, Queen. Thank you, Archbishop, Council, for your participation in communion as we gather to perfect this law, that which is our true and de jure free body of politic. With that being said, I rest and I yield the floor. Archbishop Murphy, peace and love to all those at the sound of my voice.
Well said. C.A. Murphy from the House of Murphy. Countess Walker, are you able to speak? Countess? Okay, you have the floor.
Greetings. I've heard of the Cestui Que Vie Trust for many years, and it's really mind-blowing that it had been put in place for the English heirs and successors. Also, when I was thinking about this lesson in the early 2000s, I don't know if anybody remember Dan Brown, who wrote Angels and Demons, the Da Vinci Code, the Templars. And thinking back, that was all our story that they had been preparing us for. It seemed very entertaining, but now going through these lessons with the king, it's really those with eyes can see, and that's what I'm getting at. Those with eyes can see that, you know, being English, our ancestors has laid the foundation for us to come back. So I am very thankful for the king, the queen, the archbishop for these lessons, because it's really the most important thing that I deal with every day is these lessons. So I digress.
Well said, Countess Walker. We love you too. Brother Burgers from the House of Burgers. Greetings, Noble.
Greetings, family.
Greetings, Noble. I love the way you sit, man. Hit him with your sit, your posture. Do that sitting again. Yeah, boy. This is for everybody who's new on the panel. This is Brother Burgers, noble brother. He's been with us for a long time. As you can see, he's doing this. Him and under the guidance of Officer Scott has created officer wear. It's pretty much like a template for us, just to get the views online about those who might be interested in doing security work. The attire will become more formal for the missionary work and the ministry required for the dress code. But that's a little something for now. For those who are wondering about the security aspect of our affiliation in regards to the temple, that's being headed by Brother Scott and Brother Burgers, and they're doing a great job. So we just want to thank you, as well as beautiful insight on today's inquiry. Are you finished, Brother Burgers?
Nah, I ain't even get started.
All right, go ahead. No.
Well, King is at a advanced level. So for my peers and the ones that's watching, for me, I understand why it's necessary to connect your surname back to time immemorial, do the dissertation, applying it with the Berber calendar, so you could disqualify the Gregorian and the Julian calendar to put yourself in a mindset to understand the king body politics, to tell the difference between the abstract and the concrete of which we stand. And if you're not able to do that, the surname alone does not get you a seat. You must be able to fulfill the qualifications and the criteria to even hold the station. So with that, I digress.
Ooh, that boy, you becoming a monster, boy. Well said, well said. Ooh, that's heavy. All right, Sister Walker, Countess Walker.
Alan.
Count Allen. You know I ain't gonna never get it right. I apologize. Go ahead, Countess Allen.
That's okay, King. That is okay. Well, what a tangled web they have woven for us. This lesson was very it was very fast paced. It was very high energetic, and there were so many key points that I would have to go back immediately and create an understanding for myself. But you know, I wanted to say that when you said Westminster means ministers of the West, that really just reached deep inside of me, you know, because it's so simple, you know, how easy these terms can be, you know, misconstrued and taken out of context. And we think it means totally something different. And you are just, you have a way of bringing things back to a level of understanding that I'm just amazed by it. You know, today's lesson has really deeply impacted, you know, my thinking, you know, because my mother is a bishop, you know, and I didn't really understand that until, you know, until you explained it on a deeper level. You know, I thank you for today's lesson wholeheartedly, you know, and I can't wait to go back and just, you know, just take heed of what was being said today. Thank you, and I digress.
Thank you, Countess Allen. That's my job. Make the hard simple. You know, the rough easy. You know what I'm saying? The hard soft. You know, so well said. I appreciate your kind words. Sister Middleton from the House of Middleton. Greetings, Queen.
Yes, King. This was really amazing. The Abbey versus Cathedral. I'm going all in. I have to really dig hard and deep with St. Dustin, and really move forward. Another thing that came to mind is, you know, the whole nature of these rivers drying up. Now, I didn't know London was drying up.
Yes.
Because they've had ridiculous 1,000-year floods. But the Loire River in France, that's dry. I mean, that's the longest river in France. You know, they're saying they're seeing stones where people have written on the stones, if you can read this stone, start crying, because it's that bad in terms of whatever harvest problems. And it's interesting what Brother Burgess was saying, you know, we got to look at these rivers and lands and what the boundaries are, because periodically waters recede, new land comes in. This is going to be something that's going to be really need to be addressed. So, and this is going around the world. The weather has just been off the chain. A movie that comes to mind, I can't think of it, but Sean Connery played a monk. You know, I have to look at it again, because I think that is going to give a lot of insight into the nature of these abbeys and what they were encountering when it came to these various monarchs and whatever they were doing, shaping things up. So I appreciate you, King. I'm so grateful that I have found Third Temple Church of England and, you know, everyone here on the panel. And I digress.
Well said, Sister Middleton from the House of Middleton. We love you as well. Sister Harris, are you able to say a couple of words, or are you going to digress?
No, I'm going to speak. Can everyone hear my voice?
Yes, we can hear you. Greetings.
Okay. What I want to say is, what I have come to learn since I've been here listening is that the information is so advanced and so high level. You're learning, you're retaining it, you're getting it quickly. But then as days goes on and weeks goes by, I'm sure I can agree, you can start, your eyes are opening up more and more, and you're getting more and more clarity and more understanding of how this world and this tangle world we've gotten in, based on the things that you bring to us to make us see. You know, how you was explaining the word about the bishops and the Cestui Que Trust. Like, I never really understood how it was set up or why, but the way you bring it back to us, it really hits you. And so again, I'm gonna have to go back and rewatch everything that you teach. And as I rewatch, as I gain better and better understanding each day, each week, each month. And in just every day in world and conversation, your eyes become more and more awake. I'm sure everyone can agree.
Yes. Thank you, Countess Harris. I appreciate it. You know, all our sisters spoke well. All right, let's hear from our men. We're going to give Brother Walthor. Greetings, Brother Walthor from the House of Walthor.
Greetings, brothers. Greetings, family. Wasn't able to really get glued to everything that was spoken, but I just appreciate being able to be a part of this family. I've let it be known before, and I invited someone to come in today, so I don't see him on the panel right now, so I don't know. I think I was off the panel for a minute because I was in the store. But yeah, I appreciate the information that was brought out. I just have to go back and listen to it again, because I'm really busy right now with this house of mine. So I appreciate the information, appreciate everybody's energy and everything that was said, spirit and everything. But Please forgive me for not really being attentive like I need to be, like I should have been. But I just really wanted to be on today. So I digress.
All right, brother. We here, brother. We ain't going nowhere. Just hope we here when you come back. You know what I'm saying? So you make you keep your eyes on the prize, Noble. You know. Thank you, brother. Moon Day. Greetings to have you again, brother.
Peace and greetings and love to you, King and Queen.
Thank you, brother. We appreciate it.
And my brothers and sisters on the panel. It's a lot to take in, man. I'm trying to grasp it all and know what I got going on in my mind all over the place, man. So I'm I gotta go back and I got a lot of work to do, you know. But I appreciate and I feel like I'm in the right place, and I appreciate being here and y'all allowing me to, you know, work at my own pace. You know what I mean?
Yes, the door's always open, brother. But always remember, the mind can't attend too many things at one time.
Yeah.
I'm saying that's hard to do.
I'm starting to feel that because it's starting to get a little overwhelmed. But
remember, your mind is not even attached to your body. So it ain't your mind that got you attached to these things. It's your body got you attached to these things. Your mind trying to draw you away from those attachments that the body has created contracts with. And if you let the body continue to decide what the mind trying to get you away from, then the mind is for naught. That makes sense?
Yes, sir.
Happy travels, Noble. Happy travels, Noble. Brother Militant from the House of Militant. Greetings, Rasta. Can't hear you.
Greetings, King.
Greetings.
Greetings, King. Yes, you know, the lessons on the third temple as England has no equal, like, you know, PhD level. So we really appreciate you, King, because there was nobody coming up with nothing even close, you know. So
yeah.
Thank
you.
You know,
I'm clearing up what they wrote. Now that's bad. You could bring clarity to something that they say was clear, and come to find out that what you claim was clear is dirty as hell. You can only give a glass is dirty if you put a clean glass up there. Yep. So my glass versus my view versus their view. Now whose view is clear? Mine or theirs?
Definitely yours, King.
All right, brother. All right, well said, right, well King. Said. We have my brother Gray from the House of Gray, my noble man.
Greetings, King. Greetings, Queen.
Thank you. Great to have you here continuously, brother.
All right, thank you. I'm happy that I am here, able to attend. This was another great lesson, and just starting with Westminster Abbey. You know, I keep having memories of it because I saw it in person, and the little that I know that had anything to do with me when I was standing in front of it, you know. It's crazy. Wow. You know, I was completely ignorant of what was going on. But I like the way you always bring us and show us it through the timelines, how these people usurped our calendars and our times and made up these stories and make them you know, try to fit their way into history, but they do it through the abstract because they can't do it through the concrete because it wasn't them.
You're right, brother.
Right. So, yeah, so when I started at Westminster, I did not know, and like I said, I went to a tour there, so I wasn't listening apparently, but it was 960 or 970 during the time of Edgar the Peaceful that this was established, the real Jesus Christ. So that caught my attention right off the bat. Like, wow, I was right there, but not present.
Yes.
Yes. But one of the other things,
you was looking Jesus right in the face.
Yeah, right in the face. Another one part of the lesson that I liked was about Henry VIII, because he's the one kind of started this dissolution of Westminster Abbey, basically, and changing it. And taking our funds and giving it to St. Paul's Cathedral. And he also was one that wanted to do away with the Cestui Que I was reading about that just this morning, matter of fact, before we got started. And main reason he did it was because he was losing money.
There's losing money.
So it wasn't like he was honorable or anything like that. He just wanted to keep more money in his pocket. So him and the church were fighting over money. But it's just amazing how you keep each week, even though we may go through something that we already seen, but you bring out more points that make it more enlightened and open your eyes. So that's why I say I'm very blessed to be here at the Third English Temple and being at the right English church that does have a corporate soul. Because I was also reading on that, the Paulette, the town of Paulette versus Clark. And basically that's what crushed their case, and that they didn't have anybody to give it to when they went through it. They had no one to give it to because there was no English church. They had the king or the monarch, the British monarch, to pass it on to the people, but they didn't have a person to receive it or a body politic there to receive it. So they end up making it freehold.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's the land that they gave to them that comes on the criteria to be able to keep it. It's not allodial, it's not.
It's not allodial. You doing real.
Yeah. So anyhow, I'm gonna digress because I can continue.
You're talking right. You're talking right, brother. That's the language you're supposed to talk. You limit the playing field when you talk like you talk. You don't give them ability to be able to open their mouth because remember I always say, who writes your book set your timeline. But there never a time was when we were not. Why? Because we the one wrote the books.
Right.
The books are the record, and our records go back to time immemorial. They can't go back that far. So well said, Brother Greg. And last but not least, my noble brother, my security, my keeper of the protection, Brother Scott from the House of Scott.
Greetings, King.
Greetings, my noble one.
Everybody on the panel. King, I'm always excited to learn this knowledge, but I always need clarification. So, I'm usually the one that always asks.
That's why I saved you for last.
Yeah, after we're done with these lessons. So, in Paulette versus Clark, they were talking about similarity, but not identity.
Yes.
I didn't understand that initially until you explained that the English Church and the Episcopalians at certain times were almost one and the same, or their origins came from the same era. So are they specifically talking about the English heirs, that we both with the Episcopalians have similarities, but they don't have our identity? Am I reading to that correct?
That's perfect. I couldn't have said it myself. They said that we only allow you to have access or legal interest, not an equitable interest, in the property to set up schools for the beneficiary and denote it to the wishes of the grantor, which was the king. Because no one fit the description based off the grantees. You weren't no grantee, you were only a trustee, and your job was to minister the estate until someone fit the description, and the only one qualified to fit the description was the corporation soul, as you stated. So well said.
Understood. Thank you, King.
Well said. Actually, Brother Gray spoke to that.
Yeah, I was kind of camelbacking off of but he's my elder, so I have to make sure I don't disrespect.
Yes. Well, continue on.
I'm clear, King. I digress. I mean, as long as I have clarification, I'm here with Esquire, so he tends to keep me up to speed and in line when I get a little confused sometimes. So I really appreciate everybody, and I definitely appreciate your time and your guidance.
Anytime. Did I miss anyone?
I don't think that's everyone.
Okay, Archbishop, you got the last floor.
Well, once again, everyone, this is another beautiful service from the Third Temple English Church of England. Like I said, our King Clifford Jefferson, as well as Queen Godwinson, have done a beautiful job, preparing our church for this day and time that, that we needed the most. The ancestors prophesied, and the only thing we're doing is fulfilling. So as of us being nobles from our respective houses, we are doing our obligation that we were born or reincarnated in this day and time to do. So that being said, if you find yourself, tired of dealing with the conflict and the issues that you're dealing with your present life, this is the way that you're supposed to be coming. The church is here for our angels, those who are pure at heart, who are actually ready to pledge their allegiance back to the true DEJURE, Jesus Christ, who have reincarnated today, which we call our King Clifford Jefferson. So with that being said, peace and love, and we'll see you next week.
One more thing. Anybody got any questions? Get them out now. I'm sure everybody understands what we talked about if nobody got no questions. So I expect great input on next Sunday. All right, and I'll see everybody else on the following Friday for officers meeting, as well as I need everybody who's here, who's an officer, to write their times down that they're available, so we can choose the time that's feasible for everyone, so that everyone can be able to attend. Okay, so do that. Get back with Archbishop, and I love you all. Thank you for being studious, and my reward is with you. With that, I say peace and love.
Peace and love.
Peace.
Love.
Peace.
Always.
All right.